He was involved and responsible for, in part, the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas, was involved in other attacks on conservative justices, in some cases, some alleged because of their race. Remember, they didn't want black conservatives to get ahead in the courts, the left didn't, and Joe Biden was their go-to guy on that issue. Let's get some information about that. One of the other tricks with Congress is that they've tried to protect themselves from the transparency and accountability that they expect from other branches of government, namely the executive branch. The Freedom of Information Act, Congress passed, and it doesn't apply to Congress. And so Judicial Watch has been kind of figuring out ways over the years to try to get some accountability for Congress by using the transparency laws available to us here in the United States. Now, we can get to some congressional documents through FOIA by asking the executive branch for communications with Congress. And sometimes that gets pretty tremendous results. For instance, we exposed how it was Democrats in Congress and Republican John McCain who were pushing for abuse of the IRS to target groups they didn't like politically. So that was a big victory for transparency and accountability in terms of using the law to hold Congress and expose what Congress is up to. But more recently, we've looked more closely at this, what is called the common law right to public access to government information. What common law means, it's a law that's just out there, predates the Constitution itself. It's a law inherent to the system that allows citizens to gain access to what the government's doing. Now, Congress obviously has certain privileges, the speech or debate clause, but so it's kind of hard to get certain documents under this theory. But on the January 6th issue, we've focused like a laser on getting the videos that they refuse to give us because they don't think they should be able to get. We should be able to get anything, and the emails by the security apparatus of Congress related to January 6th. The other issue is politicians who go on to other offices, like President Biden. Now, President Biden had all of his Senate records shipped up to the University of Delaware and hidden from the American people once he began running for president as a result of a secret deal with that publicly funded university. So the Daily Caller News Foundation and Judicial Watch started asking questions about the University of Delaware's deal with Joe Biden to keep these records secret. And obviously, we've tried to get access to the records. Well, long story short, we ended up before the Delaware Supreme Court. They didn't want to give us access, and the lower courts didn't bite on giving us access to the Senate records. Now, of course, those Senate records can be released at the drop of a hat by Joe Biden. So it's pretty clear Joe Biden is hiding something when it comes to his Senate archives. But the other big deal is, and to me this is a key part of the corruption, is this university misusing tax dollars for the political benefit and to hide records from the American people. And the Delaware Supreme Court, in a ruling that people should be noting, said they were unsatisfied with the way the University of Delaware provided explanations. They were unsatisfied with the explanations provided by the University of Delaware to Judicial Watch and our client, the Daily Caller News Foundation, or our co-plaintiff, I guess we should say, about how they were using, or if they were using, tax dollars to keep these records secret. Because if they were using tax dollars, we get the records. So Delaware, there's kind of this theory that if no tax dollars are being used, we can't see the underlying records. Well, so the Delaware Supreme Court said, you need to explain yourselves better. And so the Delaware Supreme Court, in a victory for transparency in government, kicked it downstairs to the court again. And the University of Delaware officials submitted some affidavits under oath that really didn't clear anything up. And so we pushed back. We didn't get the information we had requested. And so the Delaware court, the Superior Court, I think it is, yes, the Superior Court, ordered the University of Delaware to provide under oath additional information justifying its decision to keep secret its deal to house and restrict access to the U.S. Senate records of President Joe Biden. So the University of Delaware, as I stated, filed an affidavit citing no documents or other specifics, stating that no state funds were used on the university's matters or undertakings regarding Biden, and that the Biden Senate papers were never discussed at any meeting of the university's full board of trustees. Now, if that's not true, we have access to that secret scheme that was being done between the University of Delaware and Joe Biden. So Judicial Watch and our friends at the Daily Caller News Foundation filed a brief challenging the sufficiency of that affidavit. And the Superior Court judge, Mary M. Johnson in Delaware, ordered the university to provide more information. Now remember, we're taking on not only the President of the United States in his home state, Delaware. Arguably, he spends more time in Delaware than in Washington, D.C. I don't know if those are the exact numbers, but he spends at least 30 to 40% of his time up there. Obviously, he had been a senator from Delaware forever and a day. And of course, University of Delaware is another big fish in a small pond in Delaware. So we're taking on some of the most powerful entities, not only in the nation, but there in the state of Delaware. And I commend the courts for at least applying the law here without respect to the power or privilege or deference that would typically be given to the hometown favorites. And it's the glory of our system, isn't it? That little old Judicial Watch can go up against this behemoth and be on equal footing in courts under the law. Now, it doesn't always work out perfectly, and I know that system doesn't work out perfectly. I've seen it. We've been victimized by it. But more than you might know, and we win, or at least get a fair hearing, which is half the battle. And the court said, you need to go back to the drawing board. The court told the university and reminded the university that the Delaware Supreme Court mandates that the inquiry does not end with the university's filing of an affidavit swearing to information previously provided. The court directed reconsideration of whether the university satisfied its burden of proof. So they need to at least provide some information to reassure the court that no tax dollars are being used in this scheme, this document deal, and so that the law can be applied fairly. And if tax dollars were being used, we have a right to access to certain of the documents. And the court found that the generalized statements in the affidavit, and I encourage you to go on our website. We'll provide a link to the material here, and you can read the affidavit. And you can see it's ridiculous. So the court found that the university's affidavit filed with the court did not meet the burden to create a record from which the Superior Court can determine whether the university performed an adequate search for responsive documents. So the court's saying there, you didn't even give me enough information to figure out how I can rule. You're supposed to help me. And the university's playing a shell game. The University of Delaware must articulate who, identified at least by position within the university, they wouldn't even give her that, provided the information, that no state funds were spent by the university, that no salaries of any university personnel involved in the custody and curation of the papers were paid with state funds, that no state funds were spent on the university's email system for communications between university personnel and Biden representatives when such inquiries were made, and what, if any, documents other than the gift agreement were reviewed. I'd like to see that gift agreement, I tell you. But I tell you, when she highlights all that detail that she requires in order to make a decision, I don't know how else to describe it other than obviously they spent taxpayer money to do all of that. Obviously. And they're hiding that. It's absurd we're having to sue the University of Delaware just to learn how they're using tax dollars, said our client over at the Daily Caller News Foundation, the managing editor there, Michael Bastash. Rest assured, with Judicial Watch's help, we are optimistic we will uncover the truth. Joe Biden, and this is what I said, and I'll say it again so you know, Joe Biden is being protected by the University of Delaware. That's the scandal. And thankfully, the courts are growing impatient with the shell games. course, President Biden could end the dispute by simply releasing the details about the Senate records. What is Biden hiding? What is he hiding? So what are the types of records that would be interesting? Well, given Biden's corruption, that's the type of records. Those are the types of records we'd like to see. Tara Reade, who has accused Biden of sexually assaulting her, has suggested there may be records about that assault in these records. And Biden himself and his people have talked about how he was communicating with Putin and all sorts of other foreign leaders when he was president, when he was in the Senate. He was head of the Foreign Relations Committee, so it's no surprise he was communicating with those leaders. But he's president now. Isn't that interesting to know what they were talking about? And of course, we're talking about the Supreme Court. He was involved and responsible for, in part, the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas, was involved in other attacks on conservative justices, in some cases, some alleged cause of their race. Remember, they didn't want black conservatives to get ahead in the courts, the left didn't, and Joe Biden was their go-to guy on that issue. Let's get some information about that. So that's why these records are important, of public interest to the American people. But of course, I don't need to explain that to you. They're necessarily public interest because he's president. And here the University of Delaware is hiding records about their decision to hide records, about the secret deal with Joe Biden, all of which can be released by Joe Biden. So we're pressing the University of Delaware in court in Delaware with some success. But in the end, Joe Biden is the key master here, right? He can release all the records. So this is a cover-up about Joe Biden's cover-up. And again, only Judicial Watch is doing the heavy lifting to get access to these records. And obviously, it's just one of literally hundreds of FOIA lawsuits we filed to hold corrupt government officials accountable, and more specifically, to enforce the basic law that government has to provide access to information to us as citizens. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get more information in the next affidavit. I suspect the fights will continue, and let's hope the court gets issues some more rulings and makes more decisions demanding accountability, so the university, so the American people can know, and citizens and taxpayers in Delaware can know how their tax dollars are being abused and misused to protect Joe Biden from whatever the political consequences would be of full transparency about his Senate record. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.